The United States had no knowledge of it. Now this story suddenly shows up. Then it's in these leaked documents that nobody really cared that they were being leaked until it benefited the current administration to put a lid on it. Is this all just misinformation that's part of war, or is this new to this current administration?
Well, unfortunately, it's not new to this current administration. It has become a trend, and I think one could take it back to I mean, we can go back to, the Vietnam era and Lyndon Johnson's administration. I mean, the whole Pentagon Papers that were leaked by Daniel Ellsberg, dealt with the lies being told to the American public, being told to Congress by the U.S. Military, by the U.S. intelligence community. We've seen this throughout, with the Iran-Contra issues. We've seen the U.S. lie about the buildup to the Iraq War. We've seen the U.S. lie about Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the U.S. government is in the business of lying to the American people, and they do it by leaking information, by shaping the information spectrum with leaks designed to create perceptions, to dominate what the American people think is real. And so it's not unique to this, but it is not unique to the Ukraine situation. But the Ukraine situation is of such sensitivity because we're losing. I mean, I hope people understand this, that we are not achieving our objectives in Ukraine. We are being strategically defeated by our own policy. And the administration can't admit this, won't come out and be honest to the American people. So what it does is it leaks information designed to shape perception. And it's basically the American government at war with the American people about truth. And people need to reflect on what the First Amendment stands for: freedom of press, freedom of speech. It's not just your ability to speak, but it's your ability to hold to account the lies of government, that you have the right as a nation with a free press to expose the lies, that the government can't be in the business of hiding the lies. The government must be in the business of telling the truth. And when it doesn't tell the truth, it is the duty and responsibility of a free press to expose the lies, get to the truth. That's what they do. There's people that say, oh, why are you publishing this? Why are you publishing that? Well, because the government's not allowed to lie to the American people, and the government's not allowed to hide those lies behind classification. But that's what's happening today.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And even right here on this very platform, which I love YouTube, they censor things and they try to shape a narrative, and they're blocking certain people running for president to get access on the Trump side and on the RFK side. These social media companies, they're now very involved. And it used to be, like you say, it used to be a check and balance system that is now unbalanced and unchecked. And it's unfortunate. Let me go back to something that was said a year ago. President Biden said sending F-16 jets would signal World War III, or basically we would be in World War III. Now he's offered Ukraine F-16 jets, training, the whole kit and caboodle. Russia says they're actually very worried about what the United States is doing, because these jets could be retrofitted to deliver nuclear payloads into Russia. And they strongly advise the United States to back off of this escalation. What are your thoughts on the jets? What are your thoughts on Russia's worry about a nuclear payload that could reach Russia?
Well, I'm loath to speak on behalf of Russia, meaning that I don't have any particular insight. What I will say is this, that Russia is the master of escalation management. Russia wants to win the conflict in Ukraine in a way that does not drag NATO into the conflict. And so there's been a lot of effort to create provocations designed to have Russia overreact. Russia has done its own fair share of very tough rhetoric. From the very beginning, they said if NATO intervenes in Ukraine, that Russia will use all the resources at its disposal in response, which hinted at nuclear weapons. So, Russia has used rhetoric as well. But let's look at it from the Russian perspective for a moment. Joe Biden himself says that the introduction of the F-16 will bring about World War III. It's not Russia saying that. It's Joe Biden. He says, if we introduce the F-16, it'll bring about World War III. So there's apparently some sort of underlying logic in Joe Biden's statement. Now Joe Biden is saying we're going to provide Ukraine with F-16s. And from the Russian perspective, they're trying to understand how you go from starting World War III to saying it's okay to provide them. And so they have to take a look at what is it about the F-16 that could constitute a threat to Russia worthy of World War III. The F-16 airframe itself is an old airframe. I mean, it was designed in the late 1960s, fielded in the 1970s, and many of these aircraft are older than the pilots that fly them, especially the ones that they're talking about giving to Ukraine. For instance, the Netherlands has acknowledged that it won't provide any F-16 airframes to Ukraine until they've expired their operational lifespan, meaning that they're no longer held by warranty. And so they're letting the F-16s die out by old age and then say, oh, we'll give them to the Ukrainians then. So the Ukrainians aren't getting the newest, best, most airworthy airframes. They're getting old stuff. But that doesn't mean that you can't upgrade the avionics to that. The F-16 can be outfitted with certain avionics that make it a nuclear weapons capable system, a system able to deliver a B-61, which is the American air bomb that we have 100 of them in Europe right now. An F-16 properly outfitted with the right avionics, the right electronics, the right systems can deliver a nuclear weapon. That doesn't mean that that's the F-16 the Ukrainians will get. Far from it. The United States is not going to give Ukraine an F-16 that's been modified for delivery. But from the Russian perspective, why not score political points? I mean, this is an easy one for the Russians because Joe Biden has said that the delivery of the F-16 is World War III. He's now delivering the F-16. So the Russians have every right to ask the question, what is it about the F-16 that makes it so dangerous? And one of the things is that historically the F-16 can be adapted for use to deliver a nuclear weapon. I think the Russians know in their heart of hearts that this just isn't going to happen. But, you know, can you blame them for trying to score political points when the opportunity is provided, especially in this day and age of information warfare? So that's my take on it. That doesn't mean that the Russians believe what I just said. There could be legitimate concern. And the fact of the matter is we need to respect the fact that, you know, the Russians have every right to be concerned about what we're doing in Ukraine. And what we're doing is very dangerous, and it's provoked some dangerous Russian responses. For instance, in Belarus, the Russians have deployed, they've trained the Belarus Air Force and Army to use aircraft and tactical missile delivery systems, the Iskander-M, so that they can deploy nuclear weapons. And they're deploying nuclear weapons onto Belarusian soil. So if there's ever a nuclear conflict, they can be transferred to the Belarusians, who they can then fire nuclear weapons against NATO targets. Belarus is also bringing out of mothballs the old strategic missile bases that used to hold the SS-20 and the SS-25 missile systems. Now the Russians have a system called the YARS, or the Topol-M, which is a mobile missile system. These bases can house that. The Ukrainians are in the business of reactivating these bases so that Russia can deploy those systems to Belarus if necessary. This is dangerous escalation. And so the United States and NATO needs to start to pay attention to what they're doing, because providing F-16s to Ukraine, given what Joe Biden said a year ago, is a very, very dangerous escalation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Russia putting nuclear weapons into Belarus. Lukashenko seems like a pretty even-tempered guy, but he is still loyal to his friendship with Putin. And so now, you know, again, once you start having multi-country potential escalation, that's where it makes me very nervous, that this thing, you know, one wrong missile strike or explosion could pull all of us into another world war that takes years and years to put out the flames. I know.
Or in the case of a nuclear war, we'll never put out the flames. We'll all be dead.
Yeah, exactly.